morning, it's August 14th. This is To My Liberal Friends. It's the economy, stupid. We've heard that comment over and over in political campaigns. And Democrats are using various forms of this comment as they try to convince the electorate that Trump and his fellow Republicans have put the nation on a course that will mean economic ruin. When Trump began promising and then enacting tariffs on other nations, the Democrats pointed out that this number was one that high inflation would soon follow. We keep waiting for this to happen, but it hasn't occurred yet. This past week, the number that everyone in Washington was waiting for, the Consumer Price Index, came out and it was lower than expected at 2.7%. Now, this was good news to all Republicans, bad news for Democrats. And when you couple with the positive quarterly GDP numbers, rising wages, and a questionable jobs report, you can be assured there will be a lot of smiles at the White House in the Republican offices on Capitol Hill. For most presidents, unemployment, inflation, and wages have been the three most important numbers in the American economic engine, each with the potential to strengthen their political power to play the spoiler in moving their agenda and their party forward. It's been this way since 1934. During the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt called unemployment the greatest menace of our social order. 60 years later, Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman called inflation taxation without legislation. Well, I was working in Washington when Jimmy Carter left the White House and Ronald Reagan inherited an 11.8% inflation rate. 2 years later, during the midterm, it dipped to 5%. Now that was major progress, but it was still too high. But when unemployment hit a crushing 10.1% in September, the handwriting was on the wall for Republicans. The party lost 26 seats in the House of Representatives. President Barack Obama faced an unemployment rate that hit 9% in April 2009 and stayed at or above that mark for 30 consecutive months, peaking at 10%. The 2000 election came in and the Democratic Party took a bloodbath. President Joe Biden and ultimately Vice President Kamala Harris met a similar fate. After 111 consecutive months of inflation under 3%, the month after Democrats passed Biden's American Rescue Plan, inflation jumped to 4.2%. That following month began a 23-month inflation streak of 5% or higher, peaking at 9.1% in June of 22. Democrats lost the House in November of that year. I mention these numbers because it's what both Republicans and Democrats are going to be focused on sometime next year as the midterm election grows nearer. Republicans ran heavily on the economy and 9% inflation that had hit during the Biden administration. The problem they're now facing is rarely do you see prices drop, despite some unwise promises by Donald Trump. What you can do is slow down the rate of increase. The goal is to have wages increase at a rate that outpaces price increases at a large enough scale to overcome any loss of purchasing power and make families believe they're back on a strong budgetary track. With the release of this new Consumer Price Index this week, we've reached a half-year mark statistically of the Trump presidency. It was by all accounts a positive report in terms of wages versus prices. The year-over-year CPI remained at 2.7% in July, and that defied the so-called experts who were predicting the number would be 2.8% or higher. But the rise in wages is the real positive story in the economic numbers for the first 6 months of the administration. Weekly wages in June had increased from January by 1.7%, outpacing price increases that were at 1.5%. But in July, weekly wages jumped to 2.3%, while prices increased 1.7%. That was good news to everyone but Democrats, who continue to downplay any good news in the economy. This is a good sign that the economy may be heading in the right direction, with wages increasing at a faster pace than inflation. In the 2024 election, voters were clear that they wanted the next president and Congress to address the cost of living. Keeping wages ahead of inflation is the name of the game, and that report is a positive sign. These are good numbers for Republicans and President Trump to take advantage of them and not get ahead of themselves. To not fall into the trap that the Biden administration did when they went around the country declaring that Bidenomics was working. It wasn't, and people knew it. President Trump should let the policies speak for themselves. He needs to stop the self-congratulating that he's prone to do. Stop posting things like the economy is booming. Stop proclaiming that he's fueling America's golden age. Things are moving positively, but not to the level Trump keeps saying. Voters are still concerned about tariffs, the national debt, and prices in general. If you look at those numbers, they're not as positive. When I was still working, we had an unofficial policy in our firm of trying to underpromise and overdeliver when it comes to our clients. If you make outlandish promises and they don't come to fruition, people expect more than you can deliver and start to believe you failed. That's exactly the message Democrats will spread. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.